Cosworth noises, Cosworth noises. Rev limiter, boom! Chevette rear end goes bluey. Oh yeah, you big greasy bastard. So, as you guys may have noticed, I just hauled in this heavy, and I'm sure still full of fluid, T5 from an S10, first generation. We're going to be pulling apart the needed pieces to complete the T5 upgrade for the Cosworth motor swap that we'll be doing on Charlie. So we're going to need this tail shaft housing, this top shift plate, and I'm actually liking the position of this shifter a lot more than the straight rod, so we might end up using this. So what we're going to do today is break it down, pull the pieces I need, and hopefully start to put together the transmission for the Cosworth chevette swap. Alright, as you can see, I got the tail shaft housing off, got the top shift plate off, and here are the shift forks. Everything actually looks really clean inside this trans as well, so I probably end up taking the bits and pieces off of my other T5, the Camaro shift plate and tail housing, and put them on this guy, clean it up, and maybe make a couple bucks back. Not that I've paid a whole lot into this, but any kind of money back to me is always beneficial, especially when you're doing a project that could potentially cost you thousands of dollars. So we'll see what happens. Well, I got the Camaro T5 tail housing and shift plate slapped back on this S10 transmission for now. Get it out of the way, keep my parts separate. Here is the T5 from the Camaro, and it is very, very clean inside. Now I'll have to go through and clean up all of the little bits and pieces on that tail housing, as well as the other shift plate, to make sure that I have the best and cleanest bits and pieces possible for this trans. Luckily, this one looks to be very low mileage, if not recently rebuilt. So for now, I'm just going to send it, so to speak, and hope for the best. If I have to, it's a fairly easy transmission to remove, and I'll go through and rebuild it if something catastrophic happens down the road. Take a little bit of WD-40 and just kind of hose down all the exposed metal parts in here. just to make sure that while the trans isn't filled up, it's a little bit less likely to form any surface rust on some bits and pieces, and we'll do a flush right before we install. On now. There we go. And we're going to wipe that over there so I can put my fingers in it later. Some people don't like to walk the RTV down with their fingers. Say it doesn't make as good of a seal, but we're pretty good on machine tolerances here for the most part. I'm not overly worried about having a gigantic glob of RTV stacked up to try to put this plate back on top. So I'm going to walk this down with my finger and make a nice smooth mating surface so that, number one, it's evenly covered, and number two, when I slide on the shifter plate cover, we don't just grab the top of a half-inch bead of RTV and end up walking it all off to the side and have it smear out one end of the shift plate and lose some of our contact. All right, I'm happy with that. And then as a last check, I'm just going to wipe away from the inside. I mean, some of it's going to squeeze in once we tighten this all down, but the least amount you have towards the edge, the better chances you have of not having a big glob of it just hanging on in there and then flopping out later and getting ground up by the transmission. Just one last wipe here. Then we'll do the same thing here. Just a nice big glob of RTV across the top of the tail shaft housing here. Alright, got the tail shaft housing on, got the shifter plate on. I still need to pull the old rear seal prior to installing this down the road, which I'm not overly worried about it. One part I did neglect to record while I was putting the rest of the tail shaft together was the assembly of the I guess the shift pocket and the gate spring and ball. So this is already together. I greased it. I've got the better of the two sockets for the end of the shifter, which I've decided to go with this S10 one. I like the bend. Eventually I'll go to a short throw, but for now and throughout testing, I think this will be fine. But to sort of loosely go over what happened as you're putting together your shifter. So down below you've got your gate. On the bottom here you have this nub, and essentially that sort of guides you into each gear position. In addition to that, there is a ball, sort of a ball bearing check ball, that sits in these pockets and is held in place by the tension of this and a spring that usually sits in here. So this would essentially go inside. The ball and spring would be underneath. It would lock it into position. Your shift fork rod, whatever you want to call it, slides into this. It gets locked into place, and then once you have it into position, you would insert this roll pin, and this would lock your rod into the shifter cup ball thingy, whatever you want to call it. I don't have all the technicals. I know how it works, but I ended up robbing the ball and spring from the S10 transmission because somewhere in this mess of a garage I put that ball and spring, and I don't know where it went. So we ended up robbing more pieces from this, which I will then have to find later to make this a complete trans to sell. But for the time being, we're there. Let's throw the shifter on here temporarily and make sure it goes into all the gears. I'm not going to put any sealer on this because I know I'm going to have this removed when I eventually start test fitting this in the car. So, but for now, we'll do a little dabble-do of grease around the ball just to make sure everything's shifting nice and smooth. And get that in there, get it lined up. Neutral, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and reverse. Looks good to me. Here it is. S10 tail shaft housing and shifter. S10 T5 shift plate and forks. Camaro 60-degree V6 T5 case with gears. Vega bell housing. The FrAnKeN T5 is ready for the Cosworth chevette. Well, thanks for tuning in to another episode, guys. We're going to keep moving forward. We're going to keep building fun stuff for the Cosworth coming up. Hopefully I'll get the engine back from the machine shop here in the next couple weeks, and we can start tearing into ordering gaskets and bearings and everything else and getting that bottom end put together and start building that motor up. I'm getting excited, and the transmission is just one step closer. Thanks again for watching, guys. Oddfather out.